Yeah, Atalanta's Primavera setup is sort of one of the most prolific in terms of producing good players, and that's why it's no coincidence that the likes of Amad Traore is obviously signed for Manchester United, and I think a lot of people sometimes forget that Dejan Kulusevski came through at Atalanta, was loaned to Parma for last season, and it was that first half of the year that convinced Juve to spend 35 million on him. Sorry, I think Massimo Brambilla, who is the Atalanta Primavera head coach, deserves immense credit because he's been there for a little while now, and he continues to produce these players. The likes of Alessandro Cortinovis, Ebrima Colli, who is out on loan this season in Serie B, I believe, and even players like Roberto Piccoli, who I think is at Spezia this season. They've all been very good in the Atalanta setup, and I was having this conversation the other day actually. It was a point raised that I think the success of an academy shouldn't be judged on how many players from that academy come through to that club's first team. It should be the careers it produces. That was a point that Lou, who does fantastic work for Scouted, made, and I think it's an interesting point because Atalanta do, if you look at sort of the players that are littered down Serie A and Serie B, there will be an Atalanta base from a lot of them.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. That it's reflective of the business model, isn't it? Because there are clubs who develop lots of good young players or take young players on loan, for example, to take them and then put them out on loan to secure their services and see how they develop. And they don't need to sell them. So that can be a process that's ongoing. Man City have got a lot of very interesting young players out on loan at the moment. A club like Atalanta is in a position where they do need to trade those players sometimes in order to basically stay afloat. I mean, the Champions League run will have been financially beneficial to them, but they're still comparatively small, and so their business model does rely on that. And if you can take a 16-year-old and turn them into a Serie B player and sell them for even €500,000, €1 million, that's still money coming in that makes a lot of sense. And so I think it's unfair sometimes for those smaller clubs to look at them and say, well, okay, there's only maybe one or two academy graduates in your first team, that it's not working out. If you're able to sell a Kulusevski for 35 million off the basis of, playing in the Primavera and then going on loan to Parma, that's really good business, right? I mean, obviously he's a player who could have gone into their first team, but at the same time, they don't need that necessarily. The money is more important to them for the continuity of the club, and it allows them to reinvest in that youth system and find the next one. So I think it's a fair point. There's kind of a heroing of having lots and lots of youth players, isn't there? And I think sometimes that players sometimes get a pass even from fan bases because they've come through the ranks.
Absolutely. That's definitely a thing.
You don't necessarily look at Scott McTominay and think that's the future of Manchester United's midfield, but because he's come through the ranks, there's an affection granted to him. Not to single him out unfairly or anything, but
there's a soft-heartedness, I think, that perhaps
I think that's
Fred
fair.
maybe doesn't get the same slack.
No, poor Fred. But there's. Again, there are Manchester United youth players littered around the Championship or League One or what have you, and that's part of how the club sustains itself is assessing the quality of those players, giving opportunities to a few, and letting others go for a fee. All clubs survive in that way, but I think the onus is on certain clubs to do it more often, and that would be someone like Atalanta.
Yeah, I mean, 70 million euros on Kulusevski and Amad Diallo, who I think cumulative played around 15 senior games for Atalanta. It's not exactly bad business from your Primavera, is it?
It's very smart.
It is. It's very smart business. That is sensible transfers if ever there was any.
Absolutely, yeah.